theme was altered. Stories about the things that change us physically, mentally, and even temporarily. We have quite the variety of tonight. Tori, what's something that changed you?
My kid. Ew. He's continues to change me. I'm so angry at him right now. What about you?
Oh my God. They say, it's like an altered state of mind. Really? Maybe it's just me realizing that I just really love my couch. I don't know.
I think that's age.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's getting older. Oh, he's like 5. I'm just kidding. He's old. It's not that old. But yeah, everything's going to be a variety tonight. We got quite the lineup for you. We're going to get right into it. Are you guys ready or what? Okay, cool. Let's see. The first storyteller is Erika Morante. Erika shares a story about coming out of an addiction that put her in a pair of shoes that didn't quite fit.
Please welcome Erika Morante.
The roots of my addiction trace back to when I was 19 years old, when I lost my father to cancer. We were very close. I wasn't there for him in those last moments of his life. I just couldn't bear seeing him wither away. The guilt I carried was pretty heavy. So started heavy drinking, blacking out drunk, starting bar fights, doing cocaine every once in a while. I even did bath salts. Y'all remember that? That was fun. So my late 20s, I stumbled upon speed, also known as crystal meth. I'm like, okay, I'll try it, whatever, same as everything else. It wasn't. They say you never forget the moment when something overtakes you, and I never forget that day. I loved it. It's like, wow, what's this amazing thing? I'm up for days, I'm losing weight, awesome. That didn't last long, of course. You lose yourself first, then you lose a house. Buy a house, you lose some material things. Never cared for that anyways. And then it gets really dark. And then you're just in that hole for which seems forever. And then I met my husband. He was also sober. He was sober, been sober for years, and something that I was striving to do. And I looked up to him. He was there for me. We'll go on walks in the park. At this time, I was very unstable, couldn't even carry on a conversation. I lived in a small bungalow that I rented out for $100 a week, sold my art, did odd jobs, just biked everywhere, had no television, was barefoot all the time. I remember the first time he came over, I was painting outside, and he looked down on my feet, and I was like, okay, what's he looking at? And my feet were all bloody from the shoes I wore that were 3 sizes too small. And I remember he just kind of carried on the conversation like nothing was wrong. I remember, okay. And I really respected him. He didn't know that I was still using, but I was really trying to get better. So it blossomed into a relationship. Move forward, we move in together. And wow, he's in for a surprise. It's a rocky start at first. But I'm trying, I try. I'm clean for a while, a few months, relapse, clean, relapse. And he's not really aware of it. He kind of figures it out, And then one night, my husband, by the way, he is the most kindest man, gentleman, doesn't shout, he's just very kind. And one night I had a meltdown and I screamed at him, like, why are you still here? Why haven't you left? This is a moment when they leave, What's wrong with you? This is your fault. And he shouted at me for the first time. He said, because I know you're in there somewhere. And I looked at him like, what is this guy talking about? Like, this is who I am now, I didn't understand that at the time, but so he was very patient, trying to be understanding every time I relapsed. But I just didn't care. I was, in my depression, and it was numbing me, and I just was like that forever, it seemed. So I went to meetings. We tried that, did the psychiatry thing, did therapy. I did everything you're supposed to do. And some of it did work, but I would always relapse, I'd do 6 months, 5 months. And finally, I was like, you know what? Let's try this whole change people, places, and things. Let's give that a go. So we packed up our belongings from Houston, Texas. My husband and I, we left our family behind, everything, our friends, everything we knew. And we moved here. And I have no idea what made me think San Antonio, Texas, but I was like, let's go to San Antonio. And, everything was great for about 11 months. It's fine. And so everything's great, right? And then we go to Houston for a family trip. It's 11 months. I'm clean. I'm like, yes, I have one more month and meetings to say you passed that 1 year and it's done. The addiction's done. So we go to Houston. We come back to San Antonio, but I managed to sneak some drugs with me. So I have the drug, right? And I'm just waiting. I'm excited. I'm like anxious. It's been 11 months. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. And I wait. And then one day I just do it. And I'm in a parking lot by myself and I do it. But this time it's different because I overdose. So I'm like, oh, this is new. What's happening? Okay, this is a new feeling. And, I just accepted it. They say when you're near death, your life flashes before your eyes. And it didn't. I didn't think of anything. I didn't think of anyone, any loved ones. The only thought that crossed my mind was, oh gosh, I'm in my husband's car. How is he going to get to work tomorrow? That's the only thing I thought about, So get to the hospital. I don't know how I get there. I'm in the hospital. And they throw me in this little closet room. I'm treated horribly, which is understandable. Now, as a healthcare professional, I understand, that I am wasting their time being selfish and doing stupid shit. And so I'm in the hospital and I see a very bright, shining light. It's my top figure, and I see someone approaching the door, and I don't know who it is, and I see my husband's face. And I see a mirror, and it's my face, like looking back at me, and it's the pain and the anguish and everything that I never wanted him to ever feel. He was feeling, and that moment, I didn't realize that was a moment that made me just snap, and I never went back. I haven't gone back ever since then, that moment. And, wow. And I just realized everything that I've done to my family, all the pain I caused them, putting them through that. And now I live an amazing life. I work in a retirement community. It's changed my life, working with my residents. And it's been like a full, complete circle for me. And that hole I've carried in my heart almost 20 years ago since my dad passed, it's been filling up with gratitude and caring for my residents and being there for them every day. And, I love my job, and I'm so looking forward to the future and helping others. And where are you, Damon? Damon, where are you?
He's back there.
Hi, baby. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for loving me and for saving my life. And thank you. Good night. Thank you, everybody.
I saw you guys crying. I cried. Okay. Woo! Holy shit. One more time for Erika. And for the ghost, yeah. That was a couple months ago. Okay. They're late, yeah.
Our next storyteller is Shaelyn Garcia. Shaelyn shares a story about how she learned to love herself one thread at a time.
Please welcome to the stage, Shaelyn Garcia.
Hi, I used to have an eating disorder. It began when I was in high school, and around the time that the pandemic and lockdown happened was when I went into recovery. So between those two things, I gained a lot of weight. And if you've never been in that position, there's this fun thing that happens to you called body dysmorphia. If you don't know what that is, that's basically where you look in the mirror and you don't recognize yourself. Your face doesn't look like your face. Your body doesn't look like your body. So I struggled with that for quite a few years, but I've always loved fashion, so I decided I was going to do the body positivity thing, and I started, scraping together money and going to thrift stores and curating this cute wardrobe for me in my new, larger body, and it really made me feel better. It made me feel like, for the first time in a couple of years, I could look in the mirror and see who I was again. I saw the person that I expected to be, and I learned to love the body that I was in. And then I lost the weight again. And it was a really weird situation because I had people around me congratulating me and saying like, oh, you look so good, you look so healthy. But for me, the experience was that I was back at square one. My face, my body, when I looked in the mirror, wasn't what I expected to see again. And this was right around the time I started college. So I had no money at all. So I decided, looking at this closet full of clothes that I had so lovingly curated, but now were just way too big for me and I was drowning in, I decided to pull out my mom's old sewing machine that was built in the 80s, and has been sitting in our garage for 30 years. And I decided to teach myself how to alter clothes. My first real success, I had a friend over who had some experience with sewing, and I just took this old loose dress that didn't fit anymore, and I didn't use a pattern, I didn't use anything, I just pinned it on my body and took it to the sewing machine, sewed it straight out. With a few hours work, I had a dress that fit me. And it didn't just fit me like you go to the store and you put on something off the rack and you're like, okay, yeah, this fits. It was the first time in my life that I looked in the mirror and saw clothes that actually fit me, because it was made for me. It was made for my body. And that was a real revelation for me. That was a fantastic experience. And I kind of got hooked on that feeling. So I started teaching myself more things. I learned how to sew stretch fabric, which is a pain, but so worth it because it's so comfy. And I taught myself how to embroider. I bought a 5-pound bag of black dye because that's the only color I wear. And slowly over the past couple of years, I've managed to build myself a wardrobe that fits me. And that's something that I kind of want to encourage everyone to do, because the truth is, the clothes that are available to us, they're not made for us. They're made to look good on hangers and on models, and even on models, they have all sorts of safety pins and clothespins and other things to make them fit right. They're not made for our bodies. But by learning to sew, learning to alter, even something as simple as changing out a button you don't like on a shirt, you get the opportunity to say, no, I get to make the decisions here. I don't have to accept what you give me. I can make things for me. I can make the clothes fit my body instead of making my body fit the clothes, which sounds really obvious, but that's something that we often take for granted, right? There's a reason I had an eating disorder, and there's a reason that a lot of people go through that. So the long and the short of it all is that I think everyone should buy a sewing machine and teach yourself how to sew. Even if it's just like the simplest of ways, learning how to really honor your body in that way is something that I wish everyone could experience, because it really has completely changed my relationship with my body. And I'm very proud to say that I recognize myself in the mirror now.
What a great story. I got a little offended by the 80s and the garage thing. It's me. I was in the garage. Yeah, what'd you think? Were you?
I may be hanging on by a thread, but I feel like I'm a well-stitched disaster.
Yeah.
So, you know.
I like Goodwill too. Yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Beautiful. Our next storyteller is Jerry Grimaldo. Jerry shares a story about how he found himself in a place he didn't quite want to stay in.
Put your hands together for Jerry Grimaldo.
So, my first addiction was pornography and sex. At a very young age, I would watch HBO late at night. I had friends that would tell me about certain websites and whatnot. And I used that as a tool to escape and change the way I felt about myself. Because I came from like a very sheltered home. I did not have any self-esteem. I was picked on a lot. And we were poor. So I used that for such a long time, right? And so that led on until I was about, way later on. But that went ahead and changed when I was about 16. I started getting on these like forums and chat rooms like Moco Space. Shout out Moco Space, dude. Right? And from then on, I stopped becoming a viewer and started becoming a participant. So I went ahead and started seeking any kind of experience that would continue to change the way I felt about myself through, self-validation, not through self-validation, but validation from others, because I didn't have it for myself. Self-esteem through others because I couldn't find it within myself. So, at that time it was just like weed, but it was mostly like sex and like just risky experiences that were just not the norm for me, So I grew up in church a lot. I grew up with stability. I grew up with love. And I was just like tired of that. I was just so, yeah. Fuck all that, right? Yeah, dude. So then that continued until I was about like 21, 22 is when I ran into these like older folks. These older folks were doing, like cocaine, ecstasy, duster, right? And that changed my life too. Like I'll never forget the day I did ecstasy. And I felt accepted by these people. Something I was like always looking for, I found. So I ran with it. I ran with these guys. And they threw, just little parties and all that. And I remember this one specific night, they warned me about this gentleman who came to the party. He was like in his late 30s. His name was Nathan. He was a taller gentleman, Caucasian, short hair, bad teeth, very gaunt, very sketchy looking. So this guy recently lost his father, and I felt the need like, hey, I should be there for this guy. Because, people have been there for me, and that's what I've been looking for. Maybe that's what we're all looking for. So, after being told I shouldn't, mess around with this guy, I was there for him. He offered me a job, and I worked for him for a while. And while working for him, he would invite me to these like after parties at certain houses. And these were not just like regular after parties. These were like full on like fucking orgies, dude. Yeah, it was insane. It blew my mind. I was like in my early 20s, dude. I was just used to like backyard high school parties. But there's like literally like fucking in every room. There was drugs, there was alcohol, and I remember thinking, wow, dude, this is what I'm looking for. This is the experience this is the fantasy that I thought like I wanted behind those screens, right? And fast forward a couple years later, I would always like message Nathan, like, oh, hey, like, what's the move this weekend? You know? And this one, 2014, 2015, he invites me to this hotel. And in this hotel, there's the box wine. That's how you know you're down bad with that Franzia, dude. Right? And I show up there, there's people there, and then he hands me this bolo, which is like a long glass pipe, which it's where you smoke meth from. And if y'all don't know, meth and sex are like fucking this, dude. They're like this. So I remember, looking at it, making the conscious decision, yeah, let's do it. So I'm smoking this, I'm smoking it, I keep smoking it, and I don't feel anything. And then I remember thinking, dude, how do people ruin their lives with this shit? But what I did feel was this like incredible like feeling of like wanting to like fuck, pretty much. Simply put, dude. And yeah. Dude, the night went by like that. It was so fast, dude. And the ladies that are, the housekeeper ladies? They're like knocking on there, like telling me we need to check out. Dude, I wanted to chase that feeling like forever, and I did. I chased that feeling for 6 to 7 years, right? And I would be lying if I said like those weren't the best times I've had, but they were also the worst fucking times I've ever had. Yeah, I lost jobs, I lost relationships, I've lost a lot. I lost myself, most importantly. So these days now, I'm working a program. I live a different lifestyle these days. But today, I still am working on how I treat the act of sex and relationships. That's something that I believe I'm going to have to continue to work on because, from a very young age, I used that as a tool to change how I saw myself. And I never used it as, maybe, like if I actually loved somebody, it was like something that was intimate. But most of the time, it was like a selfish act for myself to make myself feel better. And, something that like I appreciate now is how I even approach life nowadays. Like everything is intentional. Like I don't just kind of casually go through life. I have intention now. And what's most important too is like I'm going through life with confidence, self-confidence now. Something I never had for myself. And living this new lifestyle, I'm able to walk with my head up high and appreciate everything, and that's all I got. Thank you.
That was the Valley, right? That was McAllen. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I knew you guys wanted to know where those orgies were. I'm just kidding. I was watching your faces. You guys are silly. I couldn't stop laughing. Okay. Wow.
Oh man. Our next storyteller is Misha Gonzalez. Misha shares a story about how important it is to continue living her life when given no other choice.
Guys, please welcome to the stage, Misha Gonzalez.
Some people are shower thinkers. Other people think best while being out in nature. But me, I get my best ideas from going 75 miles an hour down the highway. I absolutely love it. There's nothing that can reach you at that point, except for police sirens, of course. And it's rather wonderful. Another thing I really enjoy is dancing. I really, really love dancing. And that's not a joke. And I say that for those of you who are listening because I'm in a wheelchair. And
A few months ago, I was on my way driving, as I do so often, to a dance, which of course I also love. But what made this time a little special and a little unique is that this was going to be the first time that I went out alone in my wheelchair. I wasn't born disabled. About a year and a half ago, I noticed that in my left leg, I was a little weak. I wasn't as good at controlling it. I went to the doctor. Doctor said, don't worry, we're going to figure it out. And it's been a year and a half of tests and relocating across the country to have better access to healthcare and moving from a cane to crutches to a wheelchair pretty quickly. I'm 24. You know, I'm supposed to be going off and doing all these things for the first time, and I had to move back in with my parents. And so naturally, that left me with the main feeling of anger, like a lot of anger. Because on top of all these tests that they're putting you through and all these hospital stays, and they're going to tell me that they'll fix me up, they haven't been able to tell me with 100% certainty what's even wrong with me or why this is happening. I have what's known as a functional disease, so it's an issue with the actual messages being sent from my brain and then being executed or lack thereof. I've tried to reverse this, and nothing's worked so far. And of course, it's frustrating. And, you know, it causes a lot of tension, just so much tension all the time. And so when I need to release myself, I like to get into language. I love, love, love language. I cannot stress that enough. I'm a Hebrew teacher, but I did also wake up in bed with a dictionary of Welsh, Swedish, and German, so don't tell Hebrew. But I had a great time last night going to bed. Now, one thing that all languages share in common is that languages have taboo beliefs. So there are certain things which we do not talk about. And one of those things is illness. Because, as you may believe, there's a power of invocation in naming something, and there's also a power of manifestation. So you can bring it out of the darkness, or you can bring it from nothing at all, right? However, I find myself feeling a lot like the Cyclops in the Odyssey, which, if you're unfamiliar, there's a scene where the Cyclops and Odysseus are fighting, and the Cyclops demands to know who he's fighting after being blinded, and Odysseus says, nobody, you're fighting no one. And this infuriates the Cyclops, and I get that. I fully get that. To have this enemy that has no name and no face, and you can't see it, and you can't quite put your finger on it. And so, of course, I have to dance. Of course, I have to get it out. So that brings us back to the drive. So I'm driving, and I pull into the unreal city that is Austin around 11 p.m. Now, before you actually get to the rave, you hear it. The change in your car cup holder starts to jingle, and then the windows start to tingle a little bit too, and suddenly you're wrapped up in it. And as if these fabulous sights and sounds didn't have other accoutrement that came with it. Now, the people are the best part about it. They are people of a higher frequency in every way, shape, and form. Magical human beings. And their clothing options range from none at all to 3 cows worth of leather. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So, as I was making my way in and as I'm rolling up, I was just greeted and I was welcomed, and people were so friendly and so kind to me. And it was really touching. It genuinely was really touching. As you may have figured, I was not one of those kids that was popular. So this was a nice feeling. And as the night went on, I made my way over to the dance floor where I saw all of these nymph-like people congregating and began to enter a techno trance. And this steady pulse, this ancient rhythm modified and tweaked, and the frequency and filters put on it for the 21st century beats, and everybody gets into it. And slowly it sweeps from 120, and then it goes up to 160, and then it's beeping at 240, and then 380, until all of a sudden there's just this clarity that comes out of that late summer night sweat. And you can call it being in the zone, you can call it your flow state, maybe just being a part of the hum, just the general hum that reverberates, I don't know. But in that, I knew that I was in the right place, and that I knew I was meant to be there, and I knew I was meant to be there like this. in this sick body, which at that moment was entirely free from disease. And a few hours later, as I danced away the night, 5 a.m. rolled and the sun starts to come up, and one by one the nymphs departed, leaving absolutely no trace, no testimony to a beautiful summer night. Thank you.
Great job. One more time for Misa. Let her hear it one more time.
Our next storyteller is Miro Hernandez. You like that? Miro shares a story about the power he found in psychedelics.
Ooh. Please welcome me and joining Miro Hernandez.
Some may say that in order to find yourself, you must lose yourself. It was December 27th, 2021, and my life was about to be forever changed when I wake up the next morning. I had gone to bed like I normally would any night, being that I had work the next day. When I woke up the next morning, I woke up to a barrage of text messages, missed phone calls, notifications. I open up the first message. My heart is in the pit of my stomach. I open up the next message and it confirms the first. Instantly, I'm gutted. I can't breathe. One of my dearest friends in my life, a mentor in many different ways, a matriarchal powerhouse, and just a total badass of a human to know. And above all, someone I was extremely proud to call my hermana. She had been murdered in a mass shooting. Another dear friend had been shot, was fighting for his life. His recently wed wife had also been murdered during this reign of terror. This event would be the catalyst for what would become one of the hardest, heaviest times I've ever had in my life. And the universe just decides, like a bad infomercial, it says, but wait, there's more. The theme for the year was going to be loss. Heartbreaking, gut-wrenching, loss after loss after loss. It would culminate shortly a year after the anniversary of my hermana's murder. I would be one of the first to arrive at the scene of an accident, and I would stop to render aid. I approached the driver's side window to a gruesome scene. The driver slumped over the steering wheel. They take their final breath as I'm standing next to them, and I witness them physically depart this physical realm. To say that shit got really heavy and dark at times is an understatement, to say the least. All this would also happen within my first year of sobriety from alcohol. I have to stress and emphasize the sobriety to alcohol part because I am Cali sober. For those that don't know, Cali sober is a different approach to sobriety, where you abstain from alcohol, but if you choose to partake in other substances, if that's your thing, go for it. Well, that's totally my thing. I fucking love drugs. And when I say I love drugs, I don't mean the kind that have you thinking of people conjuring up images of people doing shady, sketchy shit in back alleys for their next fix. Earth can be pretty ghetto at times. I want to make my existence in this realm as comfortable as possible, so I partake in the use of cannabis on a regular basis. Those that know me will also tell you I'm also a bit of a psychonaut. One who experiences altered states of consciousness through different means. For me, my means in particular are going to be psychedelic and hallucinogenic substances, preferably in the form of sacred medicine, psilocybin mushrooms, DMT, mescaline. I've known for years there's been research involved with the studies of the use of psychedelics in helping with depression, with anxiety, PTSD, and just helping rewire the brain in general. At this point in my life, I'm already lost. It's not going to hurt anymore if I lose my mind. So I decide that we're going to embark on this psychedelic journey of healing and self-discovery and just remembering who I am. My plan was pretty simple. I was going to kill my ego over and over and over again. Ego death or ego dissolution is essentially you lose all self-identity, all self-awareness. This isn't my first rodeo with psychedelics. I've achieved this many times throughout the years of my use with mushrooms and other things. So we were going to do heroic doses of mushrooms in order to do this, and we're going to do this over and over and over again. Heroic doses of mushrooms. For those that are the uninitiated, when you hear about people taking mushrooms, they're generally taking about 3 to 4 grams. This is going to give you your standard psilocybin mushroom trip. Your heroic dose is generally 5 grams or more. You're going to go places and you're going to see things. The more you eat, the greater your chances are of achieving this ego death process. The only way to describe ego death, if you've never experienced it, you're a spectator to the world. You don't have a physical meat suit and you're just an observer watching everything happen around you. It's really, really, really bizarre experience. So not only were we going to do heroic doses of mushrooms to do this, we were going to use one of my favorite strains. Mushrooms, much like marijuana over the years, it's evolved. There's genetics, there's strains involved. One of my favorites is the aptly named penis envy mushrooms. They're highly sought after. They have about 2 to 3 times more psilocybin than your regular mushrooms. What this means, it's not the bag of mushrooms you would party with when you were a teenager. They pack quite a punch. And so we embarked on our journey. This was going to happen over and over again. And over the course of the next year to year and a half, I would have many profound experiences. And ego death was definitely achieved on many of different occasions. There's one trip that I had in particular that really, really stands out. And it's one that I still to this day, I always reflect upon it. And it always gives me kind of these chills because it was just one of those rather amazing ones. When I choose to partake, it's not anything that I do spontaneously. It's very intentional. There's a little ritual behind it. And I'm going to fast for at least 24 hours in advance. I wake up the morning that I'm going to do this. I clean my house really good. I make sure that everything's in order and it's tended to. The last thing you want to be thinking when you're tripping balls is your dirty dishes in your sink. So we get all this taken care of. I jump in the shower, cleanse myself. I get out. I measure my dose. We're doing 7 grams this time. We're going to see things and we're going to talk to God. We're going to see what happens. After we get it all weighed out, I load my copalero with copal and I smudge my house. I smudge myself. I smudge the medicine in front of me and I set my intentions forth for the trip. I go ahead and I consume, and we have about 30, 45 minutes before the effects start kicking in. I do any last minute things that I need to do around the house. I put on some music because music is always essential for a really good trip. I grab my dogs. I put them on the couch with me. Biggie in particular, he's super excited. He loves the cuddles, but little does he know he's my trip sitter. I smoke myself a little bowl, and we wait. We play the waiting game. And right on time, right around 45 minutes, the warm fuzzies start kind of kicking in. I feel like my synapses in my brain are starting to fire. Everything gets brighter. It gets fuzzier. The music starts sounding better. Everything's vibrating. Shortly after this, about 15 minutes later, the appropriately titled Coming Home by the Altons comes on. And by the time the song is done, I am gone and off in another world. I start panicking a little bit. My mind automatically goes to, fuck, here comes that bad trip they talk about. I start panicking more. And before I could completely lose my shit, I lose all concept of time. I'm no longer in my body at this point. I'm surrounded by faces, figures. I don't recognize any of them, but they all seem very, very familiar to me. At one point, they start speaking, and I instantly recognize who it is. These are my ancestors, and they're reminding me why I've chosen to do this. I'm a big advocate for mental health. I'm a very, very big, firm believer in the social contract and doing my part to better myself, because I know that my community is going to better as a whole if I'm better of myself. And this is what my ancestors are reminding me. You eat the medicine for the people. You eat the medicine for yourself. And for the next 30, 45 minutes, it's pure bliss and nirvana. I'm traveling to places that are foreign, they're familiar, places I've never been to, past, present, future, in this realm, not in this realm. And then I start coming down. What a wild ride. I smoke myself a little bit more. And for anybody, for the uninitiated, there's always going to be a second peak. Second peak comes on, and it comes on a lot harder than the first. A lot faster. But this time, I'm a lot more calm. It starts hitting, and it's more intense, it's more intense, it's more intense. And at one particular moment, there's a song that comes on, Sex Folder by Amina. It's a very moving piece. It's beautiful. I'm overcome with emotions. My eyes are filled with tears that just won't stop. At one point, I go to wipe my tears away, and I'm gone again. I'm no longer in my body. I'm surrounded by luscious green junglescapes, mountains, bright blue skies, big white clouds, and the clouds are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. everything turns really bright white. It's almost like a celestial white, and it's quiet. And then my mind and my heart are having a conversation. And they're reminding each other that I've been through some madness and chaos and turmoil in my life in the past year and a half. But I had to keep going on. I had a purpose in my life. There was a lot more light to spread in this world. And for the next 34 to 45 minutes, we were in another blissful nirvana place. I eventually would come down from the whole experience. We're talking about 5 to 6 hours from beginning to end. And when I finally come down, I thank the Creator for the medicine that I've consumed. I give thanks for the knowledge, the understanding, and the love that I've come away with. And for the next couple of days, even if it's momentary, even if it's fleeting, I'm overcome with a sense of peace and calm that I've never experienced in my life before. I can't exactly pinpoint any moment in my life where my affinity for psychedelics and altered states of consciousness came from. It's something that I've always enjoyed, and I've done different things to achieve to do this over the years. What I do know is that for me, that they've given me a different kind of understanding and perspective, not only for myself, but the world that I live in. And I'm able to approach everything with a little bit more empathy and compassion these days with a different kind of lens. I understand that tragedy is one of those things that happens. We're all going to die. But I also know that while I'm here, I'm going to make the best of my life, and I'm going to fuck around and find out and do whatever I can to make sure that I'm enjoying everything. And I'm also very, very thankful because I do believe that the medicine has done its part for me, and it's made me a better person, or at least I like to think a better person for myself and for all those that I'm around.
Have you ever done a heroic dose of anything?
Hero dose, more like I'm the main character in this nature documentary right now. So, yeah.
I did mushrooms and watched There's Something About Raymond, and I laughed the whole time. He's so funny. Just me? Okay. I was really vulnerable. You guys weren't there for me. No, it's fine. We're moving on. Our next storyteller is Cecilia Macias. Cecilia shares a story about a gut feeling and how it transformed everything.
Let's all welcome Cecilia Macias.
On average, it takes nearly 5 years to receive a diagnosis for autoimmune disease. That's 5 years. But that's from the time that the medical process begins. I think that the experience, that first inkling that something is off, that vague feeling that your body is working against you, I think that comes much earlier. In 2018, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease, an autoimmune disease that causes your thyroid to go into overdrive. I had gone to my women's doctor because I did not have a primary care physician at the time, something that's very common. Thankfully, I had health insurance. I went in for my women's wellness exam, and at the end of the appointment, she asked me, "Is there anything else? Are there any other concerns?" And I said, "Yes. Something is wrong. Something is not right." And thankfully, she listened to me. She ordered blood work, and the blood work returned with sky-high thyroid levels, the kind that affect every system of the body. Diagnosis for me felt like validation. I now knew why I was dealing with sensitivity to heat, why I was dealing with brain fog, confusion, why I was having trouble sleeping, or why I wasn't sleeping at all. I now knew why that when I was in one of my favorite places in the world, Texas A&M University, San Antonio, where they had moved the student lot to a distant pasture, that I was struggling to drag myself across the parking lot under the Texas heat, across campus to the Central Academic Building, up one flight of stairs, where I would stop on the landing and usually try to catch my breath, gather up the last bit of will and effort I had left in me to make it up the second flight of stairs and into the classroom. I would take my inhaler because I thought it was my asthma, and I could not catch my breath. About halfway through the semester, my good friend Sabrina, who had been with me through undergrad and now graduate school, leaned over to me and said, "Hey girl, I don't think this is your asthma." And that was the first time I took a moment to take an inventory of what I was experiencing, what I was feeling in my body, and try to determine what, if anything, could be done. Diagnosis and those labs that came back, that meant something could be done. I was put on thyroid-reducing medication. I was put on beta blockers because I had a resting heart rate of 120 beats per minute. I was told if I did any physical activity, any exercise at all, that I was at risk of having a heart attack. So for 6 months, I not so patiently waited for the medication to do its work. And after initial diagnosis and treatment, once my body had reached some sense of normalcy, I decided to reconnect with my body in a positive way. So in late 2020, I purchased my first pair of running shoes. And at first, I just started walking around the neighborhood. I'd walk, and then I walked a mile, and then 2 miles, and then 3.5 miles. And then I started to run. And for the first time ever in my life, I ran a mile without stopping. And I remember that achievement. I remember that feeling of triumph, and then immediately thinking, when did this all start? Was my autoimmune disease the reason that I had never been able to run a mile before? Was it the reason for my symptoms of anxiety and depression? Was it the reason for my miscarriage? My body has been through a lot. My body has carried me through a lot. What else can my body do? So I found myself looking for the next challenge, for the new way that I could push my body and really cultivate this mindset. And one day, I was casually visiting my brother, who was then preparing for officer training, and he was doing something I had never done before, a deadlift. And I walked up the driveway and up to my brother, and he looked at me and he said, "Would you like to try this?" And I said, "Yes." And he loaded the bar with 75 pounds, and I said, whoa, hold on a second. That's a lot. I don't think I can do that. And he stopped me, and he said, "You're stronger than you think you are." Up to that point, I had only lifted my 15-pound dumbbells that I usually kept stashed under the sofa. But he taught me how to go through the process of performing a deadlift. And I walked up to the bar, and I reached down, and I grabbed the bar, and I pulled up 75 pounds. And then I did it again. And then I did it again. And then he said, "Okay, that's way too easy for you. We're going to put 100 pounds on the bar." And I said, "No, absolutely not. I'll meet you at 90. And I pulled 90 pounds that day. And I fell in love. I fell in love with my body. I fell in love with the feeling of being strong. I fell in love with deadlift. And so a few short months later, one unremarkable evening, I was loading the bar with 205 pounds. And I knew as I was loading the bar, because it takes a few minutes, I knew that I was going to get that weight up off the floor. When you have autoimmune disease, you lose trust in your body. You feel alienated in your own skin. To pull 200 pounds off the floor, your only option is trust. Your only option is to believe that your body can do that work. So I walk up to the bar, I adjust my feet, I line my spine, I check my breath, I reach out and down, I adjust my grip. I pull back with my shoulder blades, and I lift. Because I continue to struggle with autoimmune disease and treatment and surgery and complications from surgery, I have not performed a deadlift in over a year. But I have this. I know what my body is capable of. I know that my body is capable of healing, and I know that my body is strong.
Oh my God. Let her hear it one more time. Holy shit. Still hearing it, I heard it. I'm just like, oh.
It gets you every time.
Yeah.
Every
yeah. How dare you? I don't like to
Right.
feel.
This is the third time, damn it.
It's the third time you've made something stir in my heart.
Our final storyteller of the night is Warren Greed. Warren shares a story about wanderlust that left him feeling a little lackluster about travel.
It's the last one, guys. Please give it up for our final storyteller of the night, Warren Greed.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Paris effect, it's the phenomenon tourists experience the first time they visit Paris. And it happens when they're excited to see the sights, they're excited to see the tower, they're excited to take in the culture and meet the people and eat the food. But when they get there, the tower is a little smaller than it looks in the pictures. The food is bland, the streets smell, and the people suck. So what often ends up happening is they end up crying beneath the Eiffel Tower on the first night. And this story is the Paris effect on drugs. It was the summer of 2022, and I had just began to dip my toe into the world of psychedelics and begin the hippie enlightenment phase of my 20s. And my work gave me a week off over the 4th of July, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, but I just started reading Jack Kerouac on the road, and I yearned for the open highway. So I didn't know where I wanted to go or what I wanted to see, but I knew I had to be on drugs to do it. So I thought the perfect destination for such a trip would be Glacier National Park, but after mapping it out, I realized a more realistic destination would be the Grand Canyon, which is still beautiful, but still a desert, which I was trying to get away from. But this way I could stop at other national parks along the way and really take in the sights. So that's what I did. I planned out a trip, and my first stop was just outside of White Sands in New Mexico. And I was staying at a state park called Oliver Lee. It was about 30 minutes outside of it, and I had no expectations for this park other than it was a cheap place to camp and a free shower in the morning. And when I got there, it was around 4:30. I was immediately filled with dread because it was the middle of the summer. It was basically the middle of the day. It was 108 degrees out. There was no shade. I'd rented the wrong type of camping site, so I was going to be sleeping on gravel. And I thought that I made a giant mistake, and that maybe I thought about maybe just turning back, but I decided I would just pitch my tent and try to make some sort of shade and see if maybe things cooled down, and they didn't. So I started to explore the park, and the park was nice. It was at the base of a mountain, and there was no trees, but it was cool. And I found out that in the early 1800s, there was a French immigrant by the name of Frenchie who had lived there. That's his name. And that's what people called him. And he had lived there. And he had lived there alone, and he had raised cattle, and he built a cabin, and he built a stone fence that climbed up the side of the mountain, and he lived the life of a recluse for about 15 years before he was found dead in his cabin with 2 gunshot wounds in his chest. And something in that moment struck a chord with me, and I didn't know what it was, but I did know that the sun began to set and my day of misery could finally come to an end. And I still wasn't sure if I would wake up the next morning and continue on with my trip or if I would turn back. And I thought the best thing to do when faced with a dilemma of this magnitude would be to take half my shrooms now and save the rest for the Grand Canyon. So I did that. I dosed up, and I crawled into my tent and began reading Hemingway until the words began to wiggle, and I started feeling constrained by the boundaries of my tent, so I had to climb out of that. And I sat in my stargazer chair and started looking at the stars, and I looked at the mountain. And for the first time since before I left, I felt good about myself or about the trip. I felt good about. I felt like I was doing the right thing, and then I felt small and I felt insignificant, and I almost felt alone until I looked to the left side of the mountain. I saw Frenchie's stone fence climbing up, and I remembered Frenchie was here, and now I'm here. And I looked up at the stars, and I wondered if Frenchie ever looked up at the same stars, if he ever felt alone. And I thought that'd be impossible. How could he? This is so miraculous. And I went to bed happy with a new lease on life. I woke up the next morning. I was ready to go to my next destination. I was going to continue on with the trip. So I arrived at White Sands. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I figured it'd be amazing, and I was wrong, and I got there. I arrived at White Sands, and I immediately knew that the slogan should be, "Yeah, that's pretty much it," because I got there and it was sand and it was white, and I don't see color, so to me it's just sand, I didn't think it was any better than any other sand, But I was definitely unamazed, but I didn't feel deterred by that. I still knew I was looking for something. I didn't know what until I started exploring the visitor center, and I learned about this special kind of lizard that they had in the park. And it was a normal lizard for the region, but here it was white, so then it could blend into the sand. And I knew that if I could just find one of these shiny Pokemon, that like this maybe the whole trip could be worth it. And so I scoured the dunes for about an hour and a half looking for one of these lizards, and tell you what, the camouflage worked. Like, I didn't see one. I didn't find it worked so well, in fact, that the only lizard I did end up seeing was when I was driving out on the white dirt roads, and I looked in my rear mirror, and there was a lizard in the road that was laying flat, and it was surrounded by red ooze that was squeezed out by my tire. And it's just nature backfiring, I didn't see it. But then I saw it, so it made it worth it. So I didn't know what to make of that, so I just kept driving. And I drove right past my next planned stop, which was supposed to be Petrified Forest, but they ended up being closed, and I didn't care to drive backwards. So, because my campsite was about half an hour in the other direction, and it wasn't a real campsite. It was on someone's private property in the middle of the Nevada desert. And it was scary. I was scared. I was listening to the coyotes, wondering if they were really coyotes and wondering how close they were. And I kept driving to the Grand Canyon, and I got there, and it was okay. It was simply fine. I wasn't disappointed. I wasn't amazed. It was hard to believe that the entire thing was carved out by giant worms. And I went back home, and I don't know what the moral of the story is. I'm no super tramp. I don't know if happiness is only real if it's shared. I don't know if sadness is only real if no one can hear you cry. But I do know that next time, if you're ever feeling anxious, if you're ever feeling unsure, if you're ever concerned about your situation, no matter where you are, no matter who you're with, drugs couldn't hurt. Thank you.